Looking on popular sale sites, and I saw a homemade pedal for a Fender Rhodes piano, and it was a bit grim. So I thought maybe it'd be fun to make my own and actually find out how hard it is to do it. So I believe this to be an original Fender Rhodes piano pedal. There doesn't seem to be anything too magic about it. It's simply a housing with a pedal that levers in the middle. This has been beaten up over the years, but it shows how well these were made. I'm sure they weren't designed to last 50 years or whatever this has lasted. These are made of cast aluminium. They've got a cast aluminium housing and a cast aluminium pedal. In the centre we've got just a basic pivot, and if you measure the length of it, it's 16 inches long, and we've got 9 inches to the pivot and then 5.5 extra on the end to the point where we push a rod. The pedal just moves the rod that pushes a button on the underside of the Rhodes piano. So my plan is to use some of this walnut offcut. I have this, but you don't need this. You can use any wood that you've got about, and I think some pallet wood would work fine. That's more than often picked up for free. Just use what's around. If you've got metal, plastic, I'm sure it won't make too much difference. Though I haven't actually used some nice wood for a project like this before, so I'm kind of quite looking forward to it. So normally I just create something as a 3D part and share it, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to show how the process actually works. So in this, we're going to use a program called FreeCAD, and this is a FreeCAD program. And I'm going to create a new part, and then we can create a sketch. It doesn't really matter what plane we're in, or what we're starting on, because that just means we'll have to rotate the part at the end, but that's really easy to do. I'm just going to go for the XY plane, as that's what I tend to use. And then using a combination of lines, circles and arcs, I'm going to create a basic profile of the shape that I want. And we're going to use a skate bearing. So this is called the 608 Z bearing. And these are super cheap. You can get these for about 50p if you really shop around. And they have an OD of 22mm and a thickness of 7mm. I know I'm mixing up dimensions, but you can tell that these were designed metric. The pedal was designed imperial. I'm just going to go for whatever feels most natural. I'm going to create the basic outline of the shape, and then I'm going to define it. So we need to define each of the dimensions that we've made. And the more stuff you make, the more natural it becomes to define these type of things. And I'm just going to go around the outside. So 22mm for the center. I'm going to add 4mm to the radius. So I'll make that. So that's 11mm radius. And then make it a 15mm radius on the outside. Going to make each end 10mm tall. Going to make a total length 50mm and then just centralize it. So I'm going to extrude this to be 8mm thick. And I know this is thicker than the bearing, but it means I can extrude an extra little lip on the back, what we can press the bearing against, and that means we know that the bearing's going to sit exactly where we want it to sit. And then as a final design touch, I'm just going to add a few radii around the shape. This should strengthen the shape, but also it means that when we put the bearing in, it should be a little bit easier. I haven't added anything for the screws on the underneath. Now my plan with those is to try and melt some screws in, and once I've kind of got all the parts assembled and aligned, we can use like a soldering iron on the screws, and that will just to give me that final bit of adjustment so I can tweak it so that make sure it's all aligned. But yeah, if you don't have access to a 3D printer, there's other things you could use. We can make this bracket out of wood. You can make it out of steel, aluminium. All you've got to do is drill a 22mm hole. There might be other ways to do that. You might be able to use some type of bracket or clip just to screw down onto a bearing. The best tool for the job is a tool you have at hand, assuming you can use it safely. So I think I'm pretty happy with this as it is. So I'm going to export this as an STL. This is just a standard file format that allows you to share 3D shapes. And I'm going to import that in a program called Cura. Now Cura basically takes that 3D shape and slices it into different layers. And it allows you to create a toolpath for each layer so that our 3D printer can interpret that as a set of instructions and create the part. Cura is free to use. And when we run it through this program, it estimates we're going to use about 6 grams of filament. Now usually the filament's about £15 per kilo, so that's about 9p per each part, so it really doesn't cost much to 3D print these parts. And as I say, if you don't have a 3D printer, a lot of cities have these available at libraries or at maker clubs, so have a look around, see what's local to you. And as I said before, I haven't really worked with nice wood before, so this is quite exciting, and I wonder if it's going to be new challenges or just something I'm going to actually quite enjoy. But here's a bracket that we've made and a bearing. And one advantage of why I want to put bearings in there is because that when we put weight on the piano pedal and we pivot it, there could be quite a bit of force and a bit of friction, and it kind of makes noise in the old design. You sometimes get squeakings and rattles and knocks and clicks, and these can come through on recordings, so it's really not great. Whereas this should be silent, as the bearings are roll, the bearings are covered in a greased environment. I say it should be, we'll find out when it's made. So next I've marked this walnut board, and this is going to act as a baseboard, and I'm just going to drill out 4 different holes on the bottom, and the point of these holes will be to put screws in that we can attach those brackets to. I've measured these out, so it should give us the right dimensions that we saw earlier with the original piano pedal. And yeah, it's interesting using this wood because it is harder than what I'm typically use, which is pine or just the cheapest bits of wood I can find, such as pallet. And it does seem a little harder, but it actually seems to hold together quite well and not actually tear out quite easily, so that's really good. I do need to find a supplier to kind of get some nice wood like. I'm not sure if that's like a UK thing or what, but it tends to be so expensive. But yeah, looking closely, it looks really nice. And I'm going to apologise, I get in the way of quite a few shots in this video, but it's my priority to make this to a high standard and not do it dangerously. I hope the editing does it well. I'm using a little pedestal drill here. As I said before, if you've got a hand drill, it'll work fine. Here I'm going to do some countersinking for the screw heads so that the base can look nice and flush. This is made for metal, but it'll work fine for this. And yeah, this time I am going to use a hand drill. To get the bearings in, we're just going to tap around the outside gently with a hammer. Ideally, we don't want to tap the inside of the bearings, just in case we damage the bearing balls or the tracks that they run on, because that could result in like a bit of a gritty, notchy bearing feel. The whole point of using bearings is it's going to be smooth. But yeah, if you are in a situation where you can buy one of these pianos from a vendor, I'd probably say do that. Like, the amount of time it takes to do this, I'm sure you'd be better off playing piano than doing. I know everyone's different and there's different cases, but yeah, if you can, please just buy a pedal from a vendor. I know they might seem expensive, but I'm sure a lot of the profit goes back into like R&D of new designs for tines and just different products that will help the community. I've put a link on the side of different vendors that make these pedals, so I understand it's not always possible for everyone to do that, and that's why I've kind of had a go at tackling this problem myself. I know if you don't live in any of these vendors, some of the shipping and import duties can be insane, and that before the world got a little political recently. But yeah, I've put a list of everyone I know who does this, but I'm sure I'll have missed someone, so please do add them in. So for a lot of my wood projects, I do tend to use wood screws. Now, is that the prettiest screw? I don't think so. What type of screw would you use if you were doing this project? In the title of the video, I do try and aim for the cheapest, and wood screws are awfully cheap, so I suppose for this scope, they are perfect. But yeah, not always the prettiest. But yeah, these seem to seat quite nicely into the countersunk holes. And there we go, we've got all 4 in. So now we need to align the bracket. I thought I'd try and make this pedal as nice as possible. And the next part here I actually found on eBay. And the original plan was just to have some square section aluminium as the pedal. But I actually found a full set of these brass piano pedals for £10. So at £3.33 for the pedal, it really hasn't added much to the cost. And I think it really looks good. It does look a bit grubby at the minute, and it's too long, so we can chop it down and we can use that with an aluminium bar as a pivot bar. Played around with positions to match the original piano design. To get the pedal and bolt to connect to each other, I've chopped a little bit out of the bar and then just going to use some bolts that go through the middle to kind of sandwich it all together. And I think it's starting to look like a pedal. And to be honest, depending on what your target is, you might be able to stop much earlier than me and just use something like this. I think that's pretty close to what will work. So here I've added some felt, and that's just to keep the noise down when it hits the extremes. And I've also added an M3 bolt at the end, and this will allow the rod to sit into. We're going to make the rod as the last thing. I've got some ideas on that and how to do it as cheaply as possible. As I said, this design now will probably work fine. But I'm going to create a box to hold it. So using a bit more of the walnut offcuts, I'm going to put that as a centerpiece, and I've got some oak for each side. Now, as I said before, use some pallet wood, use what you've got, use that bit of wood at the bottom of the garage or in the shed that was put for a project that's never happened or never will happen. And I think it's starting to come together a bit of varnish, and it'll look $1 million. But yeah, I'm just going to glue this together and do a little clamp and then leave it overnight. So as I said, the pedal does look a bit grubby, so we can give that a polish. While doing that, I'm kind of wondering what type of piano this came from. Like, it's a bit sad that pianos get broken and scrapped quite regularly nowadays. But I suppose it's good that some of the parts do get reused. To polish the pedal, I'm just going to go for a range of different polishing wheels with different compounds. I'm going from rough to smooth. This can create like a mirror-like finish if you really give it some time. I think considering it's going to have a foot on it, possibly with a shoe, I'm not going to go to town on this one. I'm just going to get it looking nice and shiny, and that will do. And the process didn't actually take that long on an object this size. It just needs a little bit of patience. And then next, with the box, I've added some parts to the ends. So one to kind of cap the end, and one that allows the pedal to come through. And I'm just going to protect the wood by adding a couple of coats of varnish. Now I really hope this brings out the contrast between the oak and the walnut. But yeah, let's see it together. This is alright, it's better than I thought, but then I think if I was to make it again, what would I do differently? I probably would try and make it a bit better. And maybe we'd round the corners? Don't know, what would you do? But yeah, we've got one last thing to do with this. We need somewhere to attach a rod to that lever in the middle. So I'm just going to hand drill a hole in the top, and that's for the rod to go through. So here it is next to the original pedal. I do like the golden brown colours. I wonder if it would be quite good to make a piano to match this pedal. Well, that's definitely a future video or two. So yeah, I'm a local hardware store to sell aluminium tube in a range of sizes, and I've got 8mm OD with a 1mm wall thickness, and that comes in a 1 metre length, and that is £7 per metre, so that's costing £3.50 per pedal. And in the middle of that, we're going to put some M5 studded bar, and if the M5 studded bar sticks out the top, we can use a nut to kind of be an adjustment, so we can change the length of bar sticking out the top. The threaded bar is £2.50 a length, so that's £1.25. The stuff we've actually bought for this project really isn't much. I'll try and add it up at the end, or come to an estimate. But yeah, to make my life a bit easier with this, I'm just going to 3D print a grip for the nut. As the nut is quite small, this makes it a lot easier to find and adjust, especially if it's under a piano. So once more on FreeCAD, I've created this file, and I'll post a link if anyone's interested. Put a comment in the video to remind me if I haven't done it already. But yeah, let's put this under a piano and see if it works. If you made it this far, do like the video and maybe share it. This helps the channel grow, and it also allows me to take on new projects. I think we've created a pedal here. I'd estimate this to be well under £20 when I add it up. And I think I could do it a lot cheaper if I really needed to. If I really needed to, we could lose the bearings, we could lose the case from the outside, and maybe do a pedal that's less than £5. But yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Bye.